tallest person in the room. What happened with school discipline was everybody in our group got sent to time out. Pretty much, right? Now, but what we said out of school discipline was we were going to work on creating new policies and work on revitalizing some of these policies that have historically kept us down. And one of the policies that we actually brought out was the elimination of these zero tolerance policies, Senate Bill 2239. And when we looked at that policy around labeling students habitually disruptive and bringing into the whole fold of zero tolerance inside schools, we looked at how can we repeal that bill or what can we do to take the legs out of it. Because we do have that zero tolerance as a state, but then we looked at local inside of most of our communities, zero tolerance is different inside everybody's community. What would be considered zero tolerance in one county may not be considered zero tolerance in another one. So how do we repeal all these different things around zero tolerance and to bring in other forms of punishment or discipline? The next one was the abolition of corporal punishment. And we talked about having conversations inside of our communities where we listen to parents, students, and community around corporal punishment. And we even inside of our own conversations around how we deal with what is beating the language, because what may be a beating one person isn't necessarily a beating to the next person. And then how we also have to deal with the fear and the lack of understanding inside of our communities around other alternatives, disciplinary practices, rather than, because we do have parents that say, well, I'm going to let them whoop mine because all of them get sent home. Or parents now thinking that, are you trying to tell me how to raise my children because I whip my kids too at home, so why they can't whoop them in school? So getting parents to understand and getting also the religious community to understand around this whole notion of spare the rod, spoil the child, what that means and how that has been stifled in our community when it comes to us letting our children be beaten in a way into submission, and it's still not submitting because if we are descendants of slaves, we have to be resilient people. So I don't know why they think that in 2012 our kids' booties just got softer. It didn't work. So they take it.
I don't know about the text that they put. And we didn't discuss that in the group either. That was our own.
It was something like that. Us man up a report back up. We ain't going to do it. So you're going to get what you get right now. Yeah, we talked about we talked about the human rights framework. They'll be fed a lot of it when we talk about restorative justice and understanding the concept of restorative justice and how we can move forward with a human rights framework inside of our schools, because so often in time, students get to school and they're no longer treated like citizens, they're no longer treated as if they're human beings in general. It's like anything that happens inside of school is fine. You can beat your child at home with a paddle and you go in jail, DHS gonna come out and get them. But if you take them to school and you beat them, it's fine, go for it. The teachers and the principals applaud you and tell you to bring other parents up there to beat their kids. So, looking at a human rights framework on this. Okay, summary by action. Can you read that?
Yes, I do.
You went to a book.
Okay, so we're educating on what was the Cper? Corporal punishment, and the school, the home, and the church. And so they talked about the relationship between how parents discipline their kids at home versus what happens in terms of discipline at school and how that feeds into the behavior of the child in both of them environments. And definitely bringing the churches into it, because Ms. Betty was talking about spare the rod, spoil the child.
Also talk about having some consistency in it as far as discipline at home and discipline in school. If their kids know where they can act out, I'm sorry, Hollis said stop using kids. Yeah. He said that those little baby goats and they can sheep. So power of the tongue, we don't say children, know where they can act up in. Right. Even at school, inside of the buildings, you know which teacher classrooms on the first day of school, you know already weed them little rascals out. You know which teacher you gonna make cry that day, and which one not gonna take it for the rest of the year. So young people have a really good way of figuring out these things. So we have to have consistency consistent when it comes to discipline. Parents have to help the schools, and schools have to help the parents. If your child is bad at home, just because you put them on that bus don't mean they turn into an angel between them 15-minute ride from your front door to the school. So you have to be able, as parents, to help with the discipline in schools, and the teachers have to be able to help when it comes to the discipline also. It has to be a lot of consistency, and people have to be able to share the raising of a child. We have to go back to the notion of it takes a village to raise a child. And the schools, and the parents, and the homes, and the churches, and all that is part of our village.
So yeah, we have a lot of stuff. We actually got 3 pages. I don't think we're gonna go over every single thing that's on here. Yeah, we're not gonna. We just refuse to do it. And you can discipline me if you want.
Spank.
He'll take one. We talked about language inside of these bills and that paint a specific picture. That was Al. We kind of skimmed through Senate Bill 2239 while he was sitting there. He looked at, go ahead, Al, you right there.
Oh, well, no, I looked at the bill. I mean, and so the thing that I saw was it was a certain type of language that had a certain type of image, and it make you see a certain population of people in the state that you drive black boys. And then it talked about if they got in trouble twice in one school year, that they would be labeled habitual offenders, not just for their school year, but for their entire duration that they're going through the education process. So for me, I said that was an in-school felony. It was like preparing a child to operate as a felon within the education district, within the education setting, because they got a label that follows them that already it determined how their child gonna be treated and how they gonna be punished. Like, and that was, so I just said that was part of what we need to look at is how these bills paint a picture that make it okay to not treat our kids like they human beings. Then we talked about the fear from the community. So part of that, I felt like we allow ourselves to become scared of our own kids based on what's been fed to us, and also that when kids get punished at school, particularly black boys, it's more out of a place of fear than it is a place of discipline. They doing something to get some kind of control over somebody that they feel like they scared of, or somebody that they know they're scared of. Then they just, so a lot of this is going back over what was some of the stuff that was on the first page, and then we talked about hosting real dialogue where folks can really come in and say what's happening from the school district level, from the level of being a parent, and a place where students can come in and talk about their experiences with discipline.
And also with that, we talked about having some real conversations, because a lot of times we have the older generation say that, but we got whoopings, and we got this and if the teachers called our house, our parents took care of it, you got beat too. So that makes it seem like your beating didn't hurt as worse as mine did, because you all doing something different. It was still a beating then as a beating now. So being able to open up those conversations, stating that it was never right, and when you know better, you should do better. We talked about too, the school uniform policy statewide, how those things are being used as tactics to push our kids outside of schools and use as disciplinary practices for no apparent reason. And how can we start to repeal some of these things that were supposed to be put in place to help with discipline that are now turning places where we're really being hurt, where students are being put out of the classroom for belts or not having their shirts tucked in. Just minute things that my belt don't cause me not to know 2 + 2 before that.
We talked about healing too.
Relationships. We will work together and respect each other's point of view.
That was just from our group. We don't know if y'all gonna work together.
So we didn't like each other first.
Yeah, and so we came up to, talk about meeting later. And then the other thing that did come up in our group was the possibility of combining some of the discussion we had with what you guys are discussing, because a lot of what happens in the special ed environment comes from what people do to kids over here.
Special ed this morning, though.
But we need P16 so they could be the kids.
I'm sorry. But so that's all right.
But we're trying to figure out how to collaborate to make all these different pieces of the program areas work together, so that we figure out where do we intersect and where do we overlap, and we can do work together around each one of these different issues. So especially when it comes to, we look at discipline, their practices, and special education students really, really big because they get beat the most. And if they don't get beat, they get left over in their corner as crazy kids and don't get any type of attention. And that's even worse. So how do we start to bring these pieces together? And man, you can line up.
Third time the charm. She made it.
Everybody just get your stuff and go. Don't